by, I believe it's 2030 or 2040, women will control the majority of the wealth on the planet. A lot of that is from inheritance. A lot of that is from, there's different reasons for that increase in single parent households, whatever it is, but we will control the majority of the money. And so we have to take the time now to start building the skills so that we feel confident to manage that money well, because money is a tool that we can put in places that make a better community.
You're listening to Make Some Noise podcast, episode number 519 with guest Chelsea Brennan. Welcome to Make Some Noise podcast, your guide for strategies, tools, and insight to empower yourself. I'm your host, Andrea Owen, global speaker, entrepreneur, life coach since 2007, and author of 3 books that have been translated into 18 languages and are available in 22 countries. Each week, I'll bring you a guest or a lesson that will help you maximize unshakable confidence, master resilience, and make some noise in your life. You ready? Let's go. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I am so glad that you are here. Guess what we're talking about today? We're talking about money. One of the, I don't want to say final frontiers, but one of the many frontiers I think that most of us, many of us, some of us feel challenged by. And there's lots of layers to this onion, this money onion, wouldn't you say? I have found that to be true. That's why I've had several guests come on to talk about it. I love hearing from different guests and how they approach it, and some things that they say might resonate, even if you've heard it before. So we're talking to Chelsea Brennan about that today. One quick thing I want to remind you of that I haven't talked about for a long time is that I am a keynote speaker, and I also do virtual keynotes. And when we think of it is that I'm doing an event for a woman who came to one of my retreats. She works for this big company, and she was like, hey, we're doing some professional development. Let's get on the phone and see if what you speak on might be a good fit. And what I do mostly is I am your quintessential motivational speaker. I am your hype girl. The consummate hype girl I am. I bring my experience as a roller derby player into one of my keynotes, and it's really fun. I do not get up on skates, though, because I was not a great player. Let's be honest. But it's a really fun keynote. People like it because there's so many misconceptions about roller derby. And also, I talk about confidence. That keynote is mostly for a women-only audience, people who identify as women. So you can head on over to AndreaOwen.com and check out my speaking page, AndreaOwen.com/speaking, to see if it might be a good fit for your company, the company that you work at. And let's move into our conversation about money. Let me tell you a little bit about our guest. Chelsea is the founder of Smart Money Mamas and its monthly membership community, the Motivated Mama Society, an ex-hedge fund manager turned financial educator. She is dedicated to changing the way we talk about money, helping women connect with all aspects of their money in a way that lets them overcome emotional blocks, identify what they most want, and create healthy money habits that help them achieve their biggest goals, all while modeling positive money relationships for the next generation. So without further ado, here is Chelsea. Chelsea, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Andrea. I'm excited.
I am really excited to talk about this because, as I was mentioning before we started recording, I am not an expert on money. I love money. Quick story. I got fired. I don't know if I've ever told this story on the podcast. I got fired from being a bank teller because I could not balance my drawer.
Oh my goodness.
I was terrible at the job because I talked to the customers too much.
Gotcha. So podcasting seems like the perfect place for you.
No, exactly. Speaking on stages, writing books, and talking to people on the podcast, I found my perfect career. Yes, but finance is not where it's at. That's why I love having guests like you on to come on and talk to us about it. And I would love to, let's start from money mindset, because for those people that might be a little bit newer to this show, let me just kind of give you a quick history of where I am with the whole abundance mindset. And I know you and I are on the same page with this, but so back in 2011, I feel like it was, or maybe even 2010, I hired my first coach. She was wonderful. And she taught me about the law of attraction, and it was big back then. Remember, it was like hot.
Oh yeah.
It was
Oh,
very
yeah.
in The Secret and all that stuff. And so it actually helped me a lot. And I asked her one question one time. I remember asking her, what about, people, money aside, what about people who have just had really difficult things happen to them, like egregious things happen? Did they manifest it? Like, it seems absurd. And she said they had a soul contract before they were born to go through those things. So I felt like it was like they manifested it, but she was like kind of tiptoeing around it. And ever since then, I was like, absolutely not. I can't with that. So that being said, and I know that's not what you would answer, talk to us about like, what is a money or abundance mindset? And also, can we acknowledge like that whole part of the kind of industry or field, if you will, of abundance mindset? I'm throwing you into the deep end, Chelsea. I'm sorry, not sorry.
I am ready for it. This is like my favorite thing to talk about. So let's talk about money mindset first, aside from the abundance. Let's leave abundance aside for a second. Your money mindset is your complete set of beliefs how you think money works in the world and how you are capable of handling money. And so this all comes for a lot of us from childhood and what we see in our surroundings. So obviously this is already steeped in privilege. One of the things we talk about on our platform a lot is what we call the money hierarchy of needs. So I assume you're familiar with Maslow's.
Yes.
Okay. So we take each level of Maslow's and we talk about how those are really different levels of financial security, right? Physiological at the bottom being, do you have a safe place to live and food and just the right clothes to keep you warm and safe, right? Security being the next step. Do you not have to face a lot of high interest debt or payday loans? Do you have an emergency fund? Are you not living paycheck to paycheck? Moving up through the pyramid. And so when we talk about privilege and what we see and how we build our mindsets, if you're someone who's born into a household who's still really at that bottom level of the pyramid, that physiological need, you're going to build a lot of fear around money, right? Because this is intrinsic to our safety and our ability to live our lives. And so, yeah, you have these big thoughts that, there's never enough and that money can be scary and that money results in you not having what you need. And people have different responses to growing up that way. Some people stay there. They assume that they are just always going to be poor and this is how it's going to be. Some people become what we call security seekers. And so they hoard money. They don't even know how to enjoy it because they're just like, no, what if something happens? What if something happens? Alternatively, if you're born into a higher level, even that just security level where, you didn't hear your parents arguing about money. You were never evicted. You're really more in that security or love and belonging area. Your views of money are going to be very different and the experiences are very different. And so when we talk about money mindset, we think about what did you decide about money when you were a kid? And let's touch here real quick too, because there's two sides to this, right? There's obviously a lot of privilege, but there's also trauma is trauma. And so there are people that were born maybe at a higher tax bracket that still had experiences that put them in a negative money mindset, right? That may be a fear mindset or a limited mindset with money. And so research shows that we set our core money beliefs around age 7.
Wow.
Which blows a lot of people's minds, right? And they're like, how is that even possible? My 7-year-old barely has ever used money. And the reason is around age 3, we understand the basic concept of money. We understand we give money to somebody and we get something back. Between the ages of 3 and 7, we see money being transacted around us. We understand that money is what keeps us in our home. We understand that whether or not we can get that toy in the grocery store or in Target is related to money. And so because human beings, are adapted to stay alive and to stay safe, we need rules because our brain can't constantly question everything that we see. It would be way too distracting. Between the ages of 3 and 7, we see things happening and we make decisions about money. These are often very black and white decisions. They're made with limited perspective because you're 6 and 7 years old, and they may not even be right, but it's a moment, right? It's mom saying in the grocery store, no, you can't have that toy because dad only gave me so much money. And you decide at 6 or 7 that dad is the one who determines what's valuable with money. He's
and
the
probably
one
that dads in general are the
dads
deciders.
in general or men in general or whatever the decision is, right? You make these big assumptions. And so when we talk about mindset, once we make that decision, Our brains look for proof of what we already believe. It is much more stable to do that. And so if you're listening to this and you're 30, 40, 50 years old, you might have been carrying around these mindset things that you decided at 7 for decades. Mm-hmm. And you've never actually looked at them and said, hey, does this align with who I am as a person? Does this align with what I want for myself? Are there ways that I've been getting in my own way because I believe this? So when we talk about mindset, we talk about really unpacking how do you understand that money works in the world now with greater perspective, with greater understanding? What do you want to choose to believe? And how do we build a bridge from where you are to where you want to be? And so the reason this is so important is because we only do see opportunities based on whatever our mindset is. We will block out things that don't agree with us. And so, yes, we come back to privilege. If you've never seen a family member, a friend, a loved one who wasn't in debt, it is going to be really hard for you, like really hard for you to pay off debt. Right. And become debt free because you just that's not even in your brain as something that is possible. And no matter how many people tell you it is, until you work on that and figure out why that exists for you and how you can make it better, you're going to self-sabotage along the way, along that goal. Right. Mm-hmm. And so what I wouldn't say is somebody who, has had really horrible things happen to them or is living in poverty. I don't think they manifested those choices. I don't think that they did anything. I think that they were exposed to a certain set of beliefs and that we also have these major injustices across racial classes and sexual orientation, all of those things that do hold people back. Yeah. But the combination of those things left them there. And while mindset can't fix all the big things, it can't fix the social injustices, it can let you see greater opportunities and make better choices to move yourself forward.
Thank you for explaining that so clearly. And it's been a minute since I've had anyone, probably a couple of years on the podcast talking about money stories. And still, every time I hear someone talk about it or I read a book about it, I'm only probably halfway clear on what mine are. And I get a little bit envious of people or colleagues or friends that are super clear on what theirs are. For instance, they remember very young. I have one friend who her parents were Christian missionaries and she always felt like a charity case. And so, that shaped her money stories. Yeah. And then I have other friends who came from money and it just was always there. And so they've always had this abundant mindset. And mine is trickier because what's interesting is it seems conflicting. My they were working class, both my parents worked, and money was never discussed at all. Yeah. And I did see my dad only paying the bills, so that probably played into it. But one interesting thing is that they were very clear about debt and that they didn't have any, or if they did, they would pay it off right away. I don't know why or what, but I knew that very clearly. However, I got into a tremendous amount of debt in my 20s. I was also an addict. So I'm sure that I feel like there's like nuance probably unique with different people. But one thing, and I've told the story on the podcast before, forgive me listeners for repeating myself, but I found it interesting. In 2015, I had an epiphany because I had hit an earning plateau. And as entrepreneurs, many times our earning potential is infinite. And yep. I had hit this earning plateau that kind of didn't really make any sense. And what I uncovered was that, both my parents were working class. I had a very happy childhood. I'm very blessed in that way, except when my dad got a different job. He was a real estate agent. He started making a lot more money. We moved. We left my childhood house and bought a new house. And it was, my dad drove a Mercedes and kind of everything shifted. And that's also when my parents' marriage fell apart. And they eventually got divorced right after I graduated high school. So I had a subconscious belief that making more money in a family and, maybe even wealth, I wouldn't consider us wealthy, but it was definitely a change from what I had grown up with, that will cause your family to fall apart.
Yes.
So that was a pretty big deal. And quite honestly, it changed a lot of things. I started making more money but which kind of brings me to my question is it's interesting because that was super helpful. And I sort of thought, I was like, I'm home free. Like, this is it. But now every few years I find like, oh, there's another one. There's another one. And I have to sort of like unpack this money drama in my head. So please tell me I'm not the only one.
Oh my goodness, no. So this is Andrea, oh my goodness, we get people come to us all the time and they're like, just give me the answer, right? Like,
Right.
what's the best budgeting tool? And I'm like, I don't know. What's your goal? What's your personality? What's your hangups? Like, there's a different tool for everyone. One of my things I say all the time is there's no one right way to do money, and that this is a journey. Like, let's go back to the money hierarchy of needs for a second. Because money is intricately tied to our humanity, our ability to stay safe, that just the realities of living in a capitalist system, we are always going to have to deal with money. And there's going to be new things that come up at different stages of our lives. This is an ongoing thing. And so for some people, you're right. They're going to have a moment. Maybe it was a really impactful moment, a really traumatic moment, that when you talk to them about this, they're like, oh yeah, this day in like March, 1992, this is when I had this moment. And some people, they're not. They're going to hear about this idea of money mindset, of money stories and money histories. And it's going to take them a while. They're going to be aware that they're there, and they're going to go about their lives, and they're going to have moments like you brought up where you're like, oh, wow, now I see what's going on. And then you'll unpack that and you'll work on it until the next thing comes up. It's actually why, when we looked at building our business, we chose to go a membership route as opposed to a standalone course, because this is not something you do once, right? This is something you need support on a regular basis. And you're always unpacking it. And I think the thing is too, on women and earnings plateaus are a really common one, right? And so I have an entrepreneur friend who definitely grew up with the money is evil kind of mindset given to her on a regular basis. People who struggled with money were harder working. They were more deserving, whatever it was, right? And rich people were lazy. And so her business hit a certain plateau. It was much more than she ever thought she was going to make. And then in the following 6 months, her father died of cancer. She went into marriage therapy the first time. And she calls me and she's like, I think my business is destroying my life. And this is a person who does not overwork, right? That's not the problem. And she was convinced that it was the money that was creating this problem. And she didn't realize it until she hit that earning point and like really was at a point where she was like, should I just shut this down? And there was a lot of work that had to be done of like, okay, you did not manifest this happening to your father. This is a horrible thing that happened, but like, where is that coming from that you think you possibly have the universal power to even create that to happen? And then in your relationship, this is something that comes up a lot too, where partners, when they're in a place of struggle, obviously money is a huge issue in relationships in general. But when you get on the same page and you're like, we're going to get out of debt, we're going to break the paycheck to paycheck cycle. You guys are fighting the big scary monster together, right? You have a goal, that you're on the same page, you're saving money, and there's all this push towards whatever that one thing is, buying your first house, paying off debt. When that goal goes away, when you've achieved it or you start to earn more money, that doesn't create problems in your relationship, but it does remove all the little day-to-day problems. So now whatever was going on underneath is more evident, right? Because you're not focused on the debt. You're not focused on the mess around the house because you can hire somebody to come in and clean once a week. And then all of a sudden those things are more prevalent. But until you reach that point, you might not realize that you think money is going to make you a worse person, or money is going to, ruin your life or whatever it is. And so this is just something that, we're always going to be working on. And you don't know what your hangups are until you put yourself in the situation and that you have the awareness. You've listened to podcasts like this where you're like, okay, I understand that there's something in the background that you can know for the signs to look for it.
Shopify's already taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But did you know that Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store? Give your point of sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify. With Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers inline and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns from TikTok to Instagram and beyond. Get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone, transform your tablet into a point of sale system, or use Shopify's POS Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/noise, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/noise to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/noise. It's hard to find a great mentor who can help me level up. My dream mentor, Shonda Rhimes. So I was really excited when I heard she has a class on Masterclass. With Masterclass, you can learn from the best to become your best. Masterclass is the only streaming platform where you can learn and grow with over 200 plus of the world's best. For just $10 a month, an annual membership with Masterclass gets you unlimited access to every instructor. And you can access Masterclass on your phone, computer, smart TV, or even in audio mode. I'm always looking for ways to be a better writer, so I took Shonda Rhimes' screenwriting class. It helped me gain concrete technical advice, including structuring, the writing process, and with shows under her belt like Grey's Anatomy and Bridgerton, it was so helpful. Plus, every new membership comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Don't wait another moment to start your learning journey with Masterclass. Right now, our listeners get an additional 15% off any annual membership at masterclass.com/Andrea. That's 15% off at masterclass.com/Andrea. Masterclass.com/Andrea.
Oh gosh, there's so much. We could do like a 3-parter on this. Okay. Well, I'm gonna stick to the script here because I really want to talk about investing. I talked about it briefly in Make Some Noise, my latest book, especially around the topic of women and saving for retirement, IRAs, et cetera. So what do you think women listening should do about building a financial legacy? It seems like such a big deal, but even just like investing for long-term equity, like where does one even start?
So funny. In April, first week of April, we did our the Legacy You Leave event. We did a whole event around moms and women building financial legacy. And so one of the first points I want to make, that's a big word, right? It's kind of like a scary word, like you just said.
It is. Yeah.
And so when we think about financial legacy, when we think about generational wealth, the first thing we think about is dollars in the bank. It's just what we do, right? Like are we going to be able to leave my kids enough money to, send their kids to school or buy their first house or whatever it is. But legacy isn't one decision or one moment in time at the end of your life. Your legacy is all the decisions you make along the way. And so this work that you're doing on your mindset today, that's the legacy, right? Because we talk about how we picked up all our limiting beliefs from watching our parents, from watching our community. And so if you can build a better relationship with money and model that better for your kids, that's a financial legacy. If you can teach them some of these skills while they're still young, even if you're learning alongside them, because we hear from a lot from women who are like, how am I supposed to teach my kids or my nieces or nephews when I don't know what I'm doing? Well, come alongside them and say, hey, this is really important. I wish I learned it. Like, do you want to work on it with me together? And so all of that builds to legacy. But let's talk about investing, because we absolutely have a gender gap in investing in wealth building in general. It's pretty massive. Despite that, by I believe it's 2030 or 2040, women will control the majority of the wealth on the planet. A lot of that is from inheritance. A lot of that is there's different reasons for that increase in single parent households, whatever it is. But we will control the majority of the money. And so we have to take the time now to start building the skills so that we feel confident to manage that money well, because money is a tool that we can put in places that make a better community, right? We can support local businesses. We can decide to not support organizations that, take advantage of their workers. We can invest in companies that are doing good things. All these reasons that women in general look at money as a way, as how it impacts their families and their greater community. Whereas men in general, once again, we're talking in generalities, people who identify as men think about more of how money impacts them in their individual life. And so there's a lot of power here. When we talk about investing, where we really want to start is just getting involved. And so whether that's, $5 a paycheck, $5 a month, whether that's, okay, I got my tax refund and I'm going to take $500 of it. I'm going to put it in my IRA, which is an individual retirement account, or my 401k. We want to get the ball rolling because we have to build this relationship that I am a person who invests, and we have to see how the market works and start to understand the terms. We get stuck often, women in general get stuck often in analysis paralysis, where we want to fully understand everything that we're doing before we jump in.
Right. We need to be an expert at it first.
We need to be an expert. And that's just A, not entirely necessary, and B, the system is created to make it hard to do that. And so when you watch TikToks or, YouTube or whatever, and people are talking about crypto and derivatives and options and all these things that, by the way, like, just don't need to be a part of your normal portfolio anyway.
Yeah, I don't even know what any of that means. So it's fine.
No. And you shouldn't, because it's not relevant. Yeah. Right. And so when research suggests that buying an index fund, and for those of you who don't know what an index fund is, it's basically a slice of everything in the market. And there's different types, but you can buy a total stock market index fund. And that means you own a tiny piece of every single public company in the country. Doing that wins on average over time, like 90+% of the time, versus trying to
have had for a long time.
And what that means is, people talk to me all the time, Andrew. So my background is I was a hedge fund investor. That's what I did. I managed a
Did you know that right before this episode, I had to look up, because I hear it all the time. And I'm like, what does that even mean? So I Googled.
Speaking of like terms that are just meant to confuse people, right?
I'm like, is it like a hedgehog is involved or what?
So I did stock analysis in New York and on Wall Street at Goldman Sachs first. And then I moved on to this hedge fund where I managed $1.4 billion. And so people come to me and like, well, what are you doing? Like, what's your hot stock tip? Oh my gosh. Especially my in-laws friends and my parents' friends, like that generation.
I bet they're super impressed. Yeah.
They are, but they're also just like, what's your hot stock tip? And I'm like, listen, I'm in all index funds. Almost everyone I worked with is in all index funds. Like, it takes so much time and energy to try to beat the market. You're trying to predict the future, which we can't do. Like, right. Just like hard pass, not going to happen. And so choosing something, so people do say sometimes like, well, if I did a lot of research, like I think I'd feel better if I could pick every single company that I'm investing in. And so I want to wait until I fully understand. I am a huge proponent that you have way more control and your time is way more valuable. Increasing your skills to earn more money at work, you're going to get a better return. Mm-hmm. Taking the time to rest and just not put yourself in a position of burnout, you're going to have the ability to be more financially successful than trying to beat the market by a little bit. And so instead, choose something simple. Choose a target date retirement fund, choose an index fund, start small, and just set a goal of every month you're going to increase it a little bit. If you have the privilege of having access to a 401k, especially with a match, which means that you put in a certain amount and your company will put in a matching amount up to a certain point, make sure you're getting that match because that's free money. You're never going to beat the return of free money.
I never understood what that actually meant when I was working in corporate America. I never fully, if I would have asked, but also if somebody would have taken the time to say like, hey, here's how this is going to benefit you. And kind of drawn it out on a piece of paper, I would have been like, oh, so it's literally free money. Like I would have put in as much as possible, but I didn't know. So I'm just like, oh, whatever you think, or just skipped it altogether.
It's not well explained.
And then I felt stupid. And then I didn't want to ask any questions.
Exactly. It's a cycle. I mean, and you get this paperwork, guys. And this is, if you have people in your life, obviously you've learned this now, but this comes back to legacy, right? If you have young coworkers around you, if you have kids or nieces or nephews that are getting their first job, talk to them about this, because this is where we lose that opportunity of the time value. We lose that free money because when you read it, it's like company will match 2% up to 4% vesting over 4 years. Like that's the line. And you're like, well, what the hell does that mean? Like,
what does that have to do with me? Like, that's all we want to know, right? Like, how is this going to benefit me?
What is vesting? What is 2% to 4%? Like, what are you talking about?
What? Right.
And so making it something that can be easily understood and passing that knowledge on when you have it is a powerful thing.
Yeah.
This is all built. This whole system is built to make it so that you have to pay higher fees and hire expensive people to make it make sense. This is not actually a complicated thing. I check my investments twice a year for 10 minutes. That's all it takes. This is not something that needs to become a second job. This is not something that needs to overwhelm you. I joke that it's just the one place in your portfolio, in your financial life, where the best thing you can do is put your head in the sand. Like, don't worry about headlines. Don't worry about the latest hot thing. Create a system, automate it, and let it ride. That's
so. Are you? Let me get this straight. So, are you against people hiring financial advisors?
I'm not against people hiring financial advisors. I think financial advisors have their place. I think that what a lot of people don't understand is that the majority of financial advisors don't have what's called fiduciary duty. And so fiduciary duty means they have to act in their best interest. Most financial people who call themselves financial advisors, which by the way is not a well-regulated term.
Oh, kind of like life coaching. Okay.
Exactly. There's insurance. They'll find a lot of like insurance salesmen that call themselves financial advisors. And so they'll try to sell you, permanent life insurance and things that are high fee, aren't necessarily a good fit for you. They have their place, but usually for a very small percentage of the population, but they get sold because they have a high commission associated with them. And so there's a lot of that goes on. And so for a financial advisor, I think if you're someone who is just at the beginning, you don't have a large amount of assets, this is something you can do on your own. If you are someone who has done a little bit of the research, right? We have a free Money Mama's Guide to Investing, which is not mom specific, and we can send you guys the link that'll give you, it's a few pages and it's everything you really need to know to invest. If you've done the research, you understand the basics, you know what an index fund is, you understand that the market is naturally going to go up and down and that there's risk involved in investing, and yet you still think, hey, I would benefit from somebody else helping me with this in a sense of like, when the market goes down and I'm panicking, somebody that I have to call to try to sell, that's going to be like, excuse me, calm down. Don't do that. Then financial advisors have a good place. If you have a massive amount of money or you've come into a lot of money quickly, right? Through an inheritance, through a huge job opportunity, financial advisors have their place. I think for many people, you really want to make sure you find a good one. You want to make sure that the cost and benefit are balanced out. Are you going to see the increased return from working with them? And do you still understand the basics of what they're doing? I don't like not engaging at all in how investing in the market works and just handing it over to somebody else, because that's where you end up in situations where things happen that you didn't want to happen because you didn't know.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that and clarifying. I've always had one, and I sort of inherited my first financial advisor in my first marriage from my former in-laws. And honestly, I thank them for that, because I would have never even approached investing at all if it weren't for them and for that financial advisor. And then when we moved to North Carolina, because it was a different state, we ended up switching, and I made sure to hire a woman. I got a referral, partly because I like supporting women, especially in finance. And I wanted my children to see a woman working at that level of finance. And I trust her implicitly. She is the person that I call. And I also like her as a human. She just, everything is in alignment with our values, and we've been really happy with her. And yes, she's the person that we call, when March 2020 happened, and she was like, absolutely do not sell.
I have definitely been in that place where my paycheck ran out before the next one got here. Life doesn't happen bi-weekly, so why should payday? The money you earn can be in your hands today with Earnin. Earnin is an app that gives you access to your pay as you work, up to $100 per day or up to $750 per pay period. Just download the Earnin app and verify your paycheck. Then access up to $100 a day as you work and leave an optional tip. Any money you access plus tips are automatically repaid from your next paycheck. You can use Earnin to pay for a girls' night out, a last-minute gift for a loved one, or even summer camp for the kids. Make Earnin a part of your financial routine and join Earnin's over 3.5 million customers who say things like, when I think about Earnin, I think about financial stability, security. It gives me a lot of peace of mind. Download Earnin today, spelled EARNIN, in the Google Play or Apple App Store. When you download the Earnin app, type in noise under podcast when you sign up. It really, really helps the show. Noise under podcast. Subject to your available earnings, location, daily max, and pay period max. See earnin.com/TOS for details. Earnin is a financial technology company, not a bank. Bank products are issued by Evolve Bank and Trust, member FDIC. You know when you're listening to a song on the radio and you get the profound feeling that the song playing was written about you? Now imagine having the power to gift that same incredible feeling to someone you love with an original song from Songfinch that actually is written just for them. Songfinch lets you create an original radio quality song inspired by your own life and the people you love. It's completely unique, personal, and lasts forever. Whether your song is for Father's Day, an upcoming graduation, wedding, or anniversary, or even just a gift to show your loved one how much you care, start your song now to lock in one of Songfinch's top artists. I gifted Songfinch to myself, a song about my late father, and I'm so excited to play you a clip.
Flipping through the slides of learning how to live and how to love, and coming undone a father, daughters without, so she writes it down.
One of my clients heard about Songfinch from this podcast, and so she had a song created for her son who was graduating, and she told me that they both cried when she played it for him and that it exceeded her expectations. For a limited time, Songfinch is letting our listeners upload their song to Spotify for free, so you and the lucky person you gift it to can listen to it anywhere, anytime. Go to songfinch.com/noise and start your song. After you purchase, you'll be prompted to add Spotify streaming for your original song for free, a $50 value. Again, my URL is songfinch.com/noise. Don't forget to share your song with us too. songfinch.com/noise.
But I also wanted to circle back to something that you said around legacy. You know, when I see that word and I hear the term generational wealth, which, you know, for people who aren't in our entrepreneurial circles, that's a term that gets talked about quite a lot. And to be honest with you, for a while there, it was freaking me out. I'm like, okay, so not only do I have to make enough money to support my family, but now I also need to like allow my children and their children to be rich as well. Yeah. And I felt like that's where people were, it was kind of like the new six figures, you know, like, and I was like, okay, no, I was really torn with probably that's my own money shit. And I don't know if I want to just hand this over to my children and my future children. So I wanted to say something quickly that was helpful for me to kind of come to terms with that. And I thought about, okay, what could my parents have given me that they didn't, not to their fault, you know, just they did their best. What could they have given me that would have made my life less stressful? Not easier per se, but just less stressful that I didn't get. And especially because if you look at Gen Z and Gen Alpha, what they are facing in terms of growing up in a capitalistic country is very different than my parents' generation, which was the silent generation, baby boomers, and even Gen X. I'm a Gen Xer, and it is very different for all these different. In other words, it's getting more challenging.
Absolutely,
you own property, et cetera, et cetera. So what I decided was, I don't want my kids to have student loan debt because I still have student loan debt, which I have paid over, and I just don't even want to talk about it. Like, it makes me cry. And I only have a bachelor's degree. It's like, and owning property. Like, I want them to be able to put down a down payment. I didn't do it until I was 40, but we were, you know, Jason and I have enough privilege and good credit that we were able to do that. It makes me nervous for my children to think about, you know, they're only 12 and 14, but these are the things that keep me up at night. I'm like, oh my God, are they going to be able to have the same things that I have, that we have? And so all that to say, that's what I decided that's the legacy I want to leave for them. I want them to have good feelings around money and understand, you know, that kind of mindset, as well as be able to buy property. You know, if we have to help them, then we will, as well as not have any student loan debt.
I like it. I like that you've thought this through. This is a lot of what we were doing in April, and we have all the replays of those available to still of the event of trying to figure out what does generational wealth mean to you. And we can go back to a second too of student loans are a big one, right? We hear from so many moms that are like, I just don't want my kids to have student loan debt.
Yeah.
And the hardest thing to tell them is you've got to put your own oxygen mask on first, which means if you're not saving enough for retirement, if you haven't taken a look at a retirement calculator and made sure you're on track, you have to do that first, because as much as we all have our own baggage and our own shit about student loan debt, which 100% is valid, it's really kicking the can down the road. So if you sabotage your own retirement to pay for your kids' college, likely what will happen is by the time you're at retirement age, you're going to need help.
Right.
And you're going to turn to them,
Oof.
even if you really don't want to. Right.
Mhm.
And it's a hard thing to hear. It's a hard thing to handle, but we can't stop there, because if I hear sometimes financial advisors, I was on a panel, I think 2 years ago, where we were having this conversation about student loans versus retirement. And the guy was like, I just tell the parents I work with, hard stop. If they're not on track for retirement, we're not saving for college. And I was like, they're never going to listen to you. They're going to walk out of the office and they're going to go away, because we care about our kids and we don't want them to have the same stress that we have.
Self-sacrifice. Mm-hmm.
That self-sacrifice. And so instead, I want you to understand that there are other ways to help your kids with college, right? So if you're not going to be in a position to pay for all of their school or even any of their school, that does not mean you can't help them. You can go and listen to the podcast and read the books about what are the best ways to fill out the FAFSA so you get the most financial aid possible. What are the scholarships you can help your kid apply to? Can you help them understand, if you go to A school versus B school, what those student loans are going to look like? And then once you've figured that out, maybe they do end up with some student loans. But if you focus instead on your own retirement and building your own career, maybe you're at a point by the time they have those student loans that you can help them pay them off, right? Or that you can, but you have to do your own stuff first, because that time value of money is really important. If your kids aren't going to college until you're, 50, 55, whenever you had kids, maybe older, you don't have a lot of time for retirement. So if you start saving for retirement, then you don't get that compound growth that you really need to make retirement possible. You're putting a lot of stress on yourself and a lot of stress on your family. One of the things we operate with in our household is what we call the family financial ecosystem, which is how do we make sure that everyone in our ecosystem, me, my kids, my parents, are all as stable as possible and thriving at any given time, right? If one of us does something to help the other that destabilizes any of the system, we end up in a place of greater struggle, right? So when we talk about the lessons we want to teach our kids, we want them to have a good money mindset. We want them, we do want to support them. Our goal is to pay for them to go to college and to have other assets as well. We have different, but we're also in that place of privilege. But the biggest lesson we teach them all the time is that you have the skills and resources to earn all the money that you've ever need. And we teach them, they're 6 and 4.
Say that again. I want to just really underscore that. Please say that again.
You have all the skills and resources to earn all the money you'll ever need.
Yeah.
And this is something we tell them constantly. My 6-year-old can parrot it back to you. And the reason for that is one of the legacies we want to leave is a problem-solving mindset when it comes to money, that we don't worry about scarcity or abundance or either of those things, but that when they come up against something that they want to achieve, paying off student loans or buying a fancy vacation house, I don't care, or anywhere in between, I don't want them to think I can't afford it, or that's a waste of money. I want them to look at it and say, do I care enough to find a solution to this problem, and then find the solution? Because even my kid who's 6, when he sees a really cool Lego, he will come up with ways to get the money, right? Like he will talk to Gigi and say, can I pick up dog poop in your backyard for $5? And I'll do this. And they will figure it out. And if you can give them that confidence in their own abilities and their own value, that is a major legacy gift, right? And so all of this comes together, but I love that you've thought about what you want to help them do. And I think that Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and millennials to a point too, because we're now really in that, I'm a millennial, are really in that sandwich generation where our parents are getting older and approaching retirement, but because our parents faced, the 2008 crisis, they might not be prepared for retirement. And we've got young kids. A lot of that wealth is being held until it gets passed down in inheritance, right? Until our parents pass away and leave a house or whatever it is. So when we think about legacy too, remember that it doesn't have to be that way. Like you can give your kids help when they need it most. That can be helping pay for college. That can be helping with their first down payment, not to make their lives, cushy silver spoon, right, but to give them a leg up. And I think that this too, we live in a capitalist society. There's a lot of feelings about the morality of billionaires and 100 millionaires and these people who have amassed wealth at the detriment of other people.
Right. We're recording this when Elon Musk just paid $44 billion for Twitter. And I'm like, what? Oh, anyway.
And we could get into a whole conversation.
Whole different conversation. Please continue.
I'm now distracted. Hold on. Okay. Pulling it back. There's a difference between people who are hoarding massive amounts of wealth and you giving your kid $25,000 to help with a down payment. Right. Those are not the same things. And so you have to work on your own mindset too, of you might have a lot of anger at that level of wealth and the breakdown of capitalism and where it doesn't work. And that can exist with giving your kids a little bit of help. Like that is not going to make your kids, entitled, silver spoon, whatever phrase you want to use, kids. This is just you deciding, what are the values? How are we going to help them out so that everyone is as stable as can be?
Thank you. And I really wanted just to make that distinction. And I don't want to just like give them a monthly allowance when they're adults. To me, that just creates entitlement. Again, that is my own opinion. If you listening want to do that for your children, by all means, knock yourself out. It was a very personal decision and a distinction I had to make. It's like, what will give them a leg up to have their life be a little bit easier and also not have them feel entitled. I do want to, before we're looking like we're going to run out of time, and I wanted to ask this specifically for mothers, and maybe even people who are in partnerships who don't have children might be in this situation. And it's people who, typically it's like the stay-at-home mother who does not work outside the home, or someone in a partnership who doesn't work outside the home. And their partners typically take care of all of the finances. What advice do you have for them? Or maybe the women do work, but they've kind of given it all up to their partner and they're not sure what's going on with the finances. What advice do you have for them?
Get involved.
Yeah.
Know where the
Stop
accounts
it right
are.
Now. Don't do that. That's your advice.
It is. And it's one of those things where we try in general I am very open to the fact that there are multiple ways to do money and one system doesn't work for everybody. And that is 100% the case. And we want this to be a no shame, no judgment place all the time. This is one place where I have a lot of tough love advice, which is get involved, know what the accounts are, know where your investments are, know how it all works and flows. I'd love you to be even involved in the day-to-day management. I want you to, as a stay-at-home parent or somebody who just doesn't, have an income or makes less than your partner, embrace your financial power. You probably still make a lot of the purchasing decisions in the home. If you're the one that is at home, you likely are the one who does all the research on where you're going to get a mortgage or something like that. Embrace the fact that you do have an impact on your family's financial life. But the reason we talk about this is there will be, for most women, there will be a point in your life where you are the only one that is in control of that money, whether your partner passes before you, which is statistically what's going to happen, whether you get divorced, whatever, or your partner is incapacitated, right? There is going to be a point where you have to take the reins, and that is going to be so much harder if you have no idea what's going on. Right. So much harder. And the thing I want to touch on too, and this is where this is a hard conversation, and I know we don't have a lot of time, but I want to touch on it. 99% of abuse cases start with financial abuse. Financial abuse is the number one most common form of abuse in the country. And most people don't even know what it is.
They don't know what it looks like, you mean?
They don't know what it looks like. They don't know what it means. And so it's restricting access to financial information. It's sabotaging your ability to work. We hear from moms sometimes who have ended up in these situations that say, hey, we were going to have a baby. My partner really wanted me to be a stay-at-home mom for at least the first couple of years. So we agreed that I'd be a stay-at-home mom until our kid turned 2. Now our kid is 5. And every time I try to bring it up or apply for a job, I get shot down, or he tells me not to, and now I feel very stuck. And at the same time, I've lost any control of our finances, right? He's changed the passwords on the account, whatever it is. These things happen all of the time. And even if you're looking at your partner and you're saying that would never, ever, ever happen to me, just protect yourself and model being involved and an active member to anyone else in your life, your friends, your kids, your nieces and nephews. Let them know that this has to be an equal partnership, because there's a very specific story where the partner literally got a head injury at work. His personality was changed overnight. He was in the hospital. He came home. He was a different person. If that's what you need to think about versus we get divorced or he does something, if that is easier for you to picture of what if something just crazy happened and he was a different person, would I be able to protect myself? I want you to be safe. And I want, if something bad does happen, that you don't have to have finances be one of the reasons that you're stressed going through those moments. We have a product called our Family Emergency Binder, which is this big fillable document that basically organizes everything in your financial life, your kids' medical information, all that kind of stuff. I had both of my parents lost a parent when they were young. things happen, right? Whether it's natural disasters, your home floods, whatever, where you need access to this information quickly, or the person who normally does it is not available. We definitely saw this happen a lot through COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So this binder kind of lays that out. And so this is the last thing of like, if you're a person who hasn't been involved, we have found and heard anecdotally that the binder is a great way to start that conversation for you to purchase it and start to try to fill it out. And when you hit things that you don't know or don't have access to, the ability to go to your partner and say, hey, so I'm filling this out because I think it'd be really just safe and helpful if I had to take over. Can you just explain to me where this is? And so using that as an easy way to come into the conversation, not in a point of blame, not in a point of argument,
fear,
but just I want to know, can you help me fill this out?
Preparedness, kind of like the list you leave for the babysitter.
Exactly. 100%. And so that can be a good place to start. But yeah, if you're somebody who's not involved, first things first, you have more financial power than you think. Just because you're not a primary income earner in the home does not mean that you do not have major impact on your family's financial success or lack thereof. And on the other side, you have to be involved and you have to take ownership.
That's a great resource. Thank you. And these will all be in the show notes, everyone. And I also want to point out, so we had a guest on the podcast in previous months named Laura Danger, and she's on, that's literally her name, which I think it's still like such a cool name, but she's that darn chat on TikTok. And she talks a lot about the division of labor. And I think she has like a playlist on TikTok where she talks about the argument of, if you're looking at like a heterosexual couple where the man says, I'm the one who makes the money. So it makes me a little bit sick. I'm the one that makes the money. My wife stays home. And therefore, I'm in charge of the finances and she doesn't really have a leg to stand on. And I'm obviously exaggerating that machismo kind of riff.
You're not exaggerating. That happens all the time.
There are people that anyway, so she breaks down really simple arguments and I'm using the term argument loosely here, but conversation starters to really prove the point of both of you are equally as valuable, and just to squash that argument of kind of like, quote unquote, the man has the say in all of the financial decisions type of thing. So I just want people to be prepared. And thank you also for that tidbit about financial abuse. I had no idea how prevalent it was. Like, I'm kind of surprised, but not surprised. And my apologies for audibly gasping, but just like I think about these listeners and I'm like, oh my God, if that's happening to you, can I come over and beat up whoever's doing that? Oh my gosh.
And if you are in a situation like that, we do have a pinned story on our Instagram about the signs of financial abuse. And there are places where, we talk about, we have a podcast episode too of like, there's this is good and healthy. There's the raise your eyebrow. I don't know how I feel about that. And then there's like the major red flags. And this is a place where there is a lot of gray area, right? But if you're feeling like you might be in one of these situations, check that story out and feel free to email me. I'm happy to send you resources and tools to understand and to start a conversation if you think that's safe, or who to reach out to if you need greater help, because it is very common and it's a tool of control, right? We can tie it all the way back to the beginning with Maslow's hierarchy. If somebody controls your ability to keep a roof over your head and food in your mouth, and especially if you have kids, that puts you in a very, very difficult position. Right. It's just something to watch out to for your friends too.
Yeah, it's highly manipulative and like you said, just controlling. You are at Smart Money Mamas on Instagram, and I'm following you. This has been so incredibly helpful. Thank you so much. Where do you want people to go? Do you have like regular online groups that you teach? I know all these links will be in the show notes, but where do you want people to go right now?
Sure. So if you go to smartmoneymamas.com, that's where all of our content lives. We do create content across multiple platforms. We have blogs, we have a YouTube channel, we have an active TikTok account and Instagram account. And so those are all great places to go. If you want more help and ongoing support working on your money journey, we have the Motivated Mama Society, which is our monthly membership community. And that's really where our core course is that walks you through mindset and setting goals that work with your personality and your values, through to creating a system that works for you. And then there's obviously ongoing support from me and master classes in there as well. But I'd head to smartmoneymamas.com. That's where you'll find absolutely everything we're doing.
Thank you so much. It's such an important conversation. And I'm so glad that, again, I can have people on who know more about it than I do. And everyone listening, thank you so much for your time. It is I'm so grateful that you choose to spend it with my guests and me. And remember, it's our life's journey to make ourselves better humans and our life's responsibility to make the world a better place. Bye for now.
Hey, did you know there's free secret podcast episodes waiting for you that are not part of my regular podcast feed? Yes, AndreaOwen.com/free. And you just sign up. You get a link sent to you. It's very secret. It's like a secret club. We don't have a secret handshake. Don't worry about that. But it's these motivating podcast episodes that I made for you. They're under 20 minutes each. There's 3 of them. They're for wherever you are in your life. So head on over there and grab them. They range from really supporting you and seeing you where you are and being compassionate, all the way to giving you a giant kick in your ass and telling you how amazing and gorgeous and phenomenal you are. So AndreaOwen.com/free and get your hands on that free podcast feed.
I'd like to introduce you to the Minimalist Moms podcast. It's hard enough being a mom, and the last thing you need is stress from too much stuff and an overcrowded schedule. For too long, I lived with the mindset that bigger was better, and the more I added to my life, instead of feeling better, I felt overwhelmed. It was time for a radical new mindset. Less is more. I'm not into extremes. I didn't throw everything away. My brand of minimalism is more about adding than subtracting. Get rid of the excess to make room for what you love. In other words, it's about living life with purpose. I hope you'll listen in, and my guest and myself can inspire you to think more and do with less. The Minimalist Moms podcast, available wherever you listen to podcasts.